I will mention we'll move, well, let me hear, all in favor of the minutes say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the minutes have been approved. And Jenna, for your information, Mr. Holden seconded the minutes. We've had a little bit of trouble picking up on who moves and who seconds. So sometimes you may get written up in the minutes and forget that you had done that because it may not have been you. So I'm going to try to repeat that for them so that we can be sure that we have that correct. Okay, for the chair's report, first of all, I have asked tonight for the Shelby County Schools board chair to come up and to, we all pretty much, I think everyone knows him, but to introduce himself, Mr. Billy Orgel, and to kind of give us just a couple of minutes of conversation about how they're doing and what we might do with them. I have been asked by the board to come and meet with them on their meetings once a month to give them updates. And so I thought that we might like to have Mr. Orgel speak to us for a few minutes.
Barbara, thank you. I really didn't need Barbara to invite me today because she told me what I needed to say. And so I'm going to reiterate. Barbara and I have gotten to be good friends quite quickly. We have our own 1-2 punch where we do speaking engagements together, and we take turns going back and forth. But first, I know we've got one school board member here, Mr. Jones at least sits on the committee, and I saw Ms. George and Ms. Malott back there in the back, and thank you all for coming, Ms. George. Thank you all for coming too, and it's tough. I know we've got meetings ourselves, and I appreciate when the people from the transition team come to our meetings too. We appreciate that. We appreciate Barbara.
Ours aren't as long as y'all's.
Well, I hope that y'all set the standard for that, and that's what, if nothing else comes out of this, and I know a lot of good will come out of it, is that we say that we have a streamlined board meeting. And I know that you have a committee that Mr. Jones and Mr. Pickler are working on governance, and I hope that gives us an opportunity to shorten the information. But first, I just wanted to thank y'all. I know we've got about half of y'all here tonight, but thank y'all for what y'all are doing. Many of us, at least the 7 appointed people on the school board, we sought the position, and the 16 other members, they sought it as well, for they were elected to it. And so you've got 23 people. You guys were chosen and had the choice to say no. So it was, I think it says a lot for our community and a lot for y'all, especially that you've got educators, financial people. We've got the mayor, and on top of running the county also comes to these meetings doing a wonderful job. So all of you, thank you for what you're doing and coming here. I think we've got a probably easier task at the moment than you guys do, because we've got 2 administrations that are doing a wonderful job. We've got the Memphis City Schools and the Shelby County Schools. We've got 2 superintendents, Dr. Atkin and Dr. Cash, that have gone about the day-to-day business of running the schools. And I think if Barbara will get tired of me saying it, but and I hope none of us ever get tired of thinking it or knowing it, is that what we're doing is about the children, and to ensure that our children are well educated and can come out and perform well in the workplace with their peers in this country and in other countries. And it's all going to start with the school system. If we want to make Memphis, Shelby County, and the suburbs a great place for people to come back to and visit and work, then we're going to have a fantastic school system, and that's going to start with what this body produces. But I will say that we're moving ahead with things administratively, at least, that we can combine with the city. And I know there was an article reported in the New York Times a few weeks ago, and they chose not to accentuate the positive about what's going on with this merger, and which I understand is the largest merger of any school system in the country ever. That we do, because I did it today. We have a walkway between the Memphis City Schools and Shelby County Schools, and I used it today, and I walked in between them. And I commend Dr. Cash and Superintendent Atkin for getting that open, and it makes it easier. And I know the people that I was with today use it because they coordinate their activities. So there's certain areas, IT, administration, the board, that they're well ahead of they're making great progress as far as coordinating and making sure they work together. I know it's a tenuous time because in many cases you have 2 people that do the same job in 2 different systems. And so you would naturally think that they're weary of each other. But I think it's been a good process, and I hope that the two groups can join together, be friends, work together, and be a part of the process moving forward and make it easy for the process to work going forward. And I want to say, if there's anything that you see from us, I'm a neophyte at this. I'm rusty on Robert's Rules of Order. I appreciate we got a parliamentarian coming to our next meeting. I was informed today by Karan, who is one of our board secretaries and works well with the board. But if there's anything that we need to do, because I know one of the things we're very, and I know we've got some municipal mayors here, we're concerned about holding this together. The merger wasn't something that the two school systems got in the room together and said, hey, we're going to do this. That's not the way it happened. But the reality is it's going to happen. And I hope what comes out of this committee and what goes to the State Board of Education and what comes to the school board is something that is palatable to all of Shelby Countyans, and that it protects our children and gives them gives everyone the feeling that this is great for our children, this is going to be good for our community going forward, and this is something that we can all live with as one school system. So with that, Barbara told me I had 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I probably went over, and I know y'all want to get out here by 6:30, and I was going to stay a little bit of the meeting and have someone have to be, but I'll go return to my spot in the back of the room. But thank y'all for what y'all are doing. Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Prescott.
It's all right. Aren't we fortunate to have Billy as the new chair of the Shelby County Schools? Thank you very much. I thought that would be fair that he stop by and speak with us, since we get an opportunity to be at the school board meetings. But thank you very much for being here, and thank those other school board members who are here also. All right, a couple other things. Miss Avery is not here tonight, but I was going to tell her that she had a mighty nice picture in the flyer this week after the meeting last week. I get the news clips and make sure that I'm reading those. There was a very nice article and some nice quotes in there, and she's not feeling well tonight, so she's not thinking she's getting the flu, so she's not here. You should have a draft of bylaws. Jenna, do they have a draft of bylaws in front of you? Don't just read them when you get home or whenever. If there are some glaring things that you see in those, we had been Kelly Rain helped get someone to draw up these bylaws, and if you have any comments on those, if you'll get those to me, then I will have yes.
I noticed two things that I would bring to your attention for consideration whenever the appropriate time is. One is on page 3, Article 4, Section 2, having at least 2 meetings per calendar month. I think, obviously we're probably going to have more than that, but I think stating that there has to be 2, because there could come a time when there really isn't anything, and we're also busy. If we don't have something that we need to meet about, I'd rather not feel like we have to have a meeting. So I just would question whether we should put that in the bylaws, especially 2. The second one is Section 3, Article 5. I do find it lacking when we would consider a committee quorum to be 1 member. So I would just put those 2 things before you and the body.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. And I appreciate that, and I'm impressed that you sat there and read all of those right there. Is there any other discussion about those 2 particular items? I think there's a good rationale for your comments on both of those. If any of the rest of you find some things, if you will do as was just done, then what I will plan to do is put that before the executive committee, and we will look at that and bring a recommendation to the full body to approve the bylaws. That's something that we've needed to do. Also, let's talk just a minute about committees, because we are beginning to meet in the committees. Some of you committee chairs have simply met with staff, so that hasn't constituted the need for for sunshining that meeting. Others have actually already had committee meetings. I want to just make you aware and cautious again to be sure that if you schedule a meeting that you notify Diane Brown good so that she can sunshine these meetings 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Also, at this point in time, we are using, thankfully, at the generosity of Mayor Luttrell, his staff, and they are just doing a yeoman's job to help out. But with the committee's meeting, when you meet, you could assign someone just to take some notes, and basically it would be who's there, what the general topic is that you're discussing, and if it is a point where there's something you're voting on, then certainly that would need to be in there. As soon as we get our consultant in, there may be someone who is readily available on the ground to do that kind of thing, but until then, Ms. Rain has informed us that we do need to have some kind of general minutes for our committee meetings. So if you could do that, and then again email them to Diane Brown, then we can keep up with those, and she can get those back to you in your committees. The other item about for you to think about as committee chairs is that we are in the executive committee. We discussed developing a budget. At this point in time, the only funds that we have intact are funds that have been set aside in the county budget, but we are underway with some fundraising that will help to fund or will fund our management consultant as well as some other things. Just one second, Martavius. So what I'm asking you to do is, if you can foresee some budgetary needs in your committee, not saying we'll have the money to do them, but at least let me know about those. And Mr. Holden and I will be working on putting that budget together. We've got to get some information about the funds that we have available, as well as what some of the costs are going to be. But there could be other costs. Martavius, excuse me.
If I recall correctly, and someone brought this to my attention perhaps over the weekend, that there was a fiscal note of $1 million attached to the Norris Todd bill. And so I think that we should make some type of inquiry as to whether any of those funds will be available for this, because we are a product of that particular bill. But I think that there was a fiscal note of $1 million assigned to this, and I think that the fact that it has been deemed constitutional, those should be some funds that will be accessible to facilitate this merger.
We'll certainly check into that. Okay. Anything else on the budget issue? Again, any kind of thing. Mr. Pickler mentioned some travel. We may want to go and visit some school districts, other things like that. We know that we've discussed some other PR expenses, and we're looking at those.
So,
yes.
Madam
Mr.
Chairman,
I know.
how are we to go about estimating what, for example, might be our PR and cost? Do you have a suggestion when we don't really know the scale of that yet?
Well, I mean, I think that first of all, we do need to know what aspect of the community engagement will be handled by the consultant. We're pretty sure about that. I don't really, I'm not sure I have the answer for that, Mr. Boyd. I think that what we want to do is try to think just kind of in a discerning way about what we think we would need, and then see, again, we have community members, both corporate and from foundations, that are wanting to help us be successful. So we believe that we will have some funds available. And I think we start with what you think, some estimate of what you think would be reasonable, and then we can see what we have and then what we might need to fundraise toward. That's just a bunch of gobbledygook, I know, and it's not a real answer, but that's all I can do for you.
So I'm going to guess, and I'll give you my best.
Sorry. feel like, no, I'm not going to say that.
When do you need these by?
I'd say in the next week.
Before the next meeting?
It would be good because we're hoping to get, to have some clear direction on fee for the consultant. So that would be good. Couple of other things. Mr. Hart mentioned just last week that it is frustrating so much. We are receiving invitations to various events. Sometimes we get them after the event is over, and so that's not something that we can really always control. But I will tell you that I did share that, Mr. Hart, with Diane Brown, and she resent our contact information to a number of kind of typical outlets, both school districts and governmental places and so forth, and urge them to give us enough notice, if at all possible, when we have invitations. One other thing I did want to bring up with you, we did get an invitation that was sent out electronically. This particular person wanted to send us invitations by snail mail. So our office did not give out our addresses at this time. Is that, how do you feel about that? Would you prefer that, or is it okay, or is there any, can you give me any direction on that? Because in most cases, we could be invited electronically. Speak up. Does it matter if your addresses are, don't care?
I prefer electronic, personally. I prefer electronic, but I certainly don't mind my address being given out.
Okay. All right. Well, if once you've served on a school board, you just know that all your information is just, out there anyway. So it doesn't really matter to me, but I want to be as sensitive to the rest of you as possible. But all right, thank you. I'll make a decision on that. I did also want to keep you up to date that we are that I'm getting some speaking requests. I'm sure some of you are getting them too. We're going to have a report in a moment from the Communications and Community Relations Committee. But I have, in the past 2 days, spoken at 2 different places. One was for the People First Committee in Memphis Fast Forward, and that committee does deal with education and so forth. And Mr. Orgel, that's what he was referring to. We spoke together at that meeting, and also again today at the Associated Builders and Construction Trades. We spoke at a luncheon there. So we're again, we'll get a little bit more information that can inform us as we go out and speak. But I would just ask that as a representative on this committee, that we all be very careful about our speaking engagements, that we deal, come on in, Mr. Pickler, that we deal with what we know and where we are and the facts as they are at this point, and just in deference to the to be sure that we're kind of not getting ahead of ourselves. Okay. I do think that when people ask us, I'm not one of those. I don't think we should be saying, "Oh no, we can't speak yet." I think that we need to be out there, and I know that other people are speaking, and I appreciate that. So, okay, I think that is about it for that report. Now I'm going to just move this next item because Daniel Keel, I had. Hi, Kenya. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. So we'll count you present. All right. I'm going to move the next report. Daniel Keel teaches a class downtown at the law school, and I think tonight is his last night. But he will be coming in, and I'll just pick up wherever we are and allow him to give his report at that time. Earlier in when we were meeting, I asked Daniel to do some analysis and research and look into the question of our need for legal services on our own. We do have some legal services through county government, and and actually through both school districts. So when he gets in, we'll allow him to give that report, and I think you have before you his report or got it electronically. Do you have that in front of you too? In hard copy? Okay. All right, then committee reports. Mr. Boyd and Ms. Bradshaw is on the line with us. Would you give a report from the Communications Community Engagement Committee?
Sure. We met this past Monday, and Kenya Bradshaw and I were convening the meeting. We were joined by members of, by Steve Schiller from the mayor's office. Barbara Prescott was present. Daniel Keel was present from the Transition Commission, and Chris Caldwell from the school board. John Smrelli was present as well. And then we had 3 members from the staff, Memphis City Schools. There was some communication issue, and Shelby County School did not get the notification. And so we have looked after that. As a result of our conversation and our discussion, we proposed several items for action. The first of which was to convene a meeting of both Memphis City Schools communications staff and Shelby County Schools communications staff. That was originally scheduled for tomorrow, or today, and has been rescheduled for tomorrow at 2:30. It will take place room B1 in Shelby County Schools. This is to have the staffs come together and talk about how all of us can work together to provide appropriate and adequate communication across the community and using the resources available through both systems. So we're scheduled for that meeting tomorrow. Second piece is that Dr. Smrelli, who's online, has taken on the development of a packet of information that we want to provide for all members of the Transition Commission and the school board in terms of what do we know? You know, what is the information from which we can all be speaking about the process in which we're engaged, and that we can share with the larger community. So Dr. Smrelli is working on that material. In addition to that, the next piece was to actually to a point that our chair made, which is the recognition that a number of us have been invited and are speaking at various locations. And one of the things we'd like to do is just keep track of that. We think that's important to know where folks are speaking and to whom we're speaking. And so we've asked the staff to create a clearinghouse so that electronically, but via email, we can communicate with the mayor's office and register the location and the communities to whom we're speaking. So we, again, really like to encourage all of you to do that, and that information, I believe, has been sent out or is going to be sent out. Do we know?
I don't know.
Look forward to a notification about the clearinghouse, because that we've been working on getting that set up.
Ms. Brown is not here tonight, so we'll check on that with her.
The next piece of action was that we felt it was important to begin building communications with the media, and so we asked that the chair of our commission begin a process of informal communication with heads of media in our community and begin to build that relationship at this point in time. And the next piece was the development of an RFQ for professional assistance. That's PR assistance. And so that has been developed or is being developed and will be distributed. So what we're looking for is professional PR assistance, communication assistance to work with the commission and asking for those folks in the community who feel qualified to please let us know about that. And finally, Chris Caldwell, who had joined and was participating with us, has indicated his willingness to help us with an expansion of the frequently asked questions, and so that we begin to a process of enlarging that over time as we move farther and farther along with this process. What are the frequently asked questions? What are the answers that we can share with the community in an ongoing kind of way? So Chris has offered to help us with that. Madam Chairman, that completes my report.
Thank you. And let me just say that I do, Steve Schuler has already scheduled me to speak with 2 of the news directors, so that's in line. And the other thing about the FAQs, I don't know if you've looked at those, but I just made a comment to Jenna and asked her tonight. The questions are there, but you have to click for the answer, and I think the questions are kind of startling, so I'm asking them to kind of rework that where you can see the answer right away with the question, if that's meets with everyone's approval. Thank you very much, Mr. Boyd.
Chairman, can I add one comment in addition
yes.
to our report?
Yes.
We received a letter today from the co-chairman persons from the Unified School Board on community engagement, Attorney Denise Kempro, and also Chris Caldwell, expressing their support and willingness of working together collaboratively moving forward and wanting to work to support as we move forward in communicating and then hosting joint events. So just wanted to share that information as well with the rest of the Transition Planning Commission.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bradshaw.
And they will be in attendance at our meeting tomorrow.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and finish the committee reports, and then we'll go back to Daniel to your report, okay? Mr. Cates, do you have a report of the Finance Committee?
Yes, very brief. We had our first meeting this past Monday. It's kind of your worst nightmare at those kind of things to see Pam and Anita pull up with so much material that they need the rolling luggage thing, and that's what they came with. And we are just totally in fact-finding, question-asking mode, so we're just trying to understand the P&L. We are, hopefully later, we'll know enough to ask more intelligent questions about the detail of that and the different accounting treatments and the different methods of the 2 systems. And we're going to go through kind of a primer on the real estate, the age of facilities, and where that is, and how much that is, and that kind of stuff. So it is all trying to get questions answered at this point, and that'll take a while.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Richards, do you have anything that you can say or want to say about where you are with the consultant? Say no if that's proper.
Well, let me just. We are working very hard both to put in place an underlying capability for this commission to contract. As you may or may not know, we do not have, based on a conversation I had with Ms. Raines, an ability to contract as a commission. So we've had to work through a process where we will have a 501c3, hopefully, who will agree to contract on our behalf, and this commission will be the beneficiary of that contract. So before we can come to an arrangement with the consultants that we can finalize, we're having to put in place that underlying capability. Hopefully, we are building enough flexibility into that, and this is my intent, so that if there are needs for other contracts, for instance, the PR firm, that basic arrangement would be able to be the basis for that contract as well. So we're working on that. I have been in conversations with the principal of BCG this week and received from him late yesterday a more detailed statement of work, and I'm working with trying to get that into some format that it could be shared. We still have quite a good ways to go.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for the work that you're doing and getting started. These are the only reports that I'm aware of. Were there any other committees that needed to make a report of any kind? Okay. Thank you very much. Daniel Keel is going to give the report that I mentioned earlier. He both has had to be here late because of his class, but this is his last one. But he also has to leave early because his documentary is being shown again tonight at the law school. So, Daniel, this is your spot.
Thank you.
Mr. Keel, excuse me.
Daniel's fine. So I saw my role here as more fact finder and fact presenter than someone who's going to come with a recommendation either that we do or don't hire outside counsel, and certainly not recommender at this point as to if we do choose to hire outside counsel, who it might be. And I guess you guys have the memo, and I won't go through it line by line, but I'll try to hit some of the highlights. And then, Madam Chair, I don't know if the appropriate thing would be to open it to discussion. I'm happy to address questions.
Sure.
Or, facilitate the discussion or whatever. So the question was, and Chris kind of alluded to another potential, instance where we might need to have a contract, and that would be with a lawyer. And the issue arose, and arises out of the uncertainty about exactly where we are, who we are, what we sit underneath. Do we sit underneath the school system, or do we sit underneath the county government, or do we sit underneath the state government, or do we sit independent of all of these people and all of these entities? And so there's just some uncertainty about that creates uncertainty about where we get our legal advice and what our legal advice precisely would be. We have at our disposal, thanks to Mayor Luttrell, the county attorney, Kelly Rain, and several individuals on her staff. She has been, as I understand it, the primary go-to person that we rely on thus far. In addition to the county attorney's office, we have the general counsel for the city schools, Dorsey Hobson, and the general counsel for the Shelby County schools, Valerie Speakman. Both of them have also been helpful so far. They also have significant expertise on school-related issues. But this is a pretty complicated thing. Their jobs, independent of trying to merge, are complicated. An education lawyer runs the gamut of just put a list in the memo of the types of things that we might run into. And obviously a mergers lawyer also deals with a lot of different things. And here we have a situation where we're doing both at the same time. So it's very, very complicated. In addition, we have access to the State Board of Education to sort of bounce ideas off them. And I've listed several other entities who might be able to provide us with some guidance and potentially legal advice. But none of those, and I think that what sort of called this problem to our attention is that none of those entities is really the lawyer for the Transition Planning Commission. We are not any of their primary client. And so while I think that we can get the answers to the vast majority of our questions from the resources that we have at our disposal already, that doesn't mean that we necessarily can get the answers to all of our questions. Okay? And even where we do get answers, we might get conflicting advice. And so it might be, I think that that's what drove the question as to whether we should get outside counsel. So the pros are we have someone who is committed to our interests, and sort of we are the primary client. We, the commission, are the primary client. This, most of the time, I would guess, isn't going to be that important. I think that the existing resources, most of the time, are going to be able to get us the answers we need in an efficient way and correctly, and obviously inexpensively. I think that that's going to be the case with the vast majority of legal questions that we encounter. However, it might not be the case with every legal question that we encounter, and where it isn't the case, if we don't have a fallback, the disruption could be substantial. So that would be a reason to hire outside counsel. There are other reasons on there, but that, to me seems to be the big one. And the conflict could be a few different things. It could be either the existing resources disagree with one another, in terms of their opinion, and since none of them has us as their primary client, we don't know, we're sort of left to judge. It's also possible where they may actually have conflicts. So, for instance, on bond issues, the county and this commission might not be perfectly aligned in terms of interests, and so relying on the county attorney may be problematic in such a circumstance. I don't think it's likely that we're going to get to sort of real ethical conflicts of interest for the lawyer, but we at least get to the point where conflicts, there's apparent conflicts, or where the apparent neutrality of the advice we get is able to be called into question. I don't think that, I don't think we would get anything but the best advice from our existing resources, but it's not just about that, it's also about perception. The cons are it's expensive. And it's especially expensive when, as I said, I think we can get most of our answers from the resources that we have. Other cons include it might be hard to find someone to serve in this capacity. It might be even more hard to find someone to serve in this capacity locally. And I say that because we need someone with expertise, and that's a limited pool, but they also need to not be involved in the litigation that has, that sort of led as part of this process, because then they would be on some level conflicted out. And so that is a practical bar to this process. So it might take us some time to identify the appropriate firm or person to be the lawyer. So balancing all that, I sort of came up with a few different options. We could opt to forego completely using any sort of outside attorney. On the other end of the spectrum, we could retain someone full-time so that they would be our primary legal resource. We would be paying them really to come to every meeting to know as much as we know, essentially. That's where you get the best legal advice, is where the lawyer is essentially a part of the team and is able to participate actively throughout the process. That's obviously the most expensive option. Or we could do some sort of hybrid option in which we rely on the existing resources as much as we find appropriate, and we have either someone or a group of lawyers on call, either someone as sort of the primary outside counsel in waiting to the commission, or a pool of resources that might be subject matter experts, like maybe they know employment law, or maybe they know property law, or whatever, that we call on as the circumstances dictate. These options give us a little more flexibility and a little more control of the budget, but still could end up being costly. And the only other thing that's not really in the memo, and I haven't said so much, is it might be worth, and I'm just not familiar enough with this, discussing with the consultant, because they're going to be, it seems, on some level involved in managing an outside counsel and managing the kinds of questions that we might need to ask an outside counsel. And so it might be worth, in addition to having a discussion amongst ourselves, getting some input from the consultant once on board in terms of how they see an outside counsel operating. So, like I said, I don't have recommendations. I've laid out a few options, and I think it's worthy of the full commission's deliberation on this question.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Keel, for the work that you've done on this. I think we had talked about a number of these things, but to have it all compiled here in an organized fashion helps us. Let's have some discussion on this at this time. Ms. Richards?
Maybe I could just add one thing. It is apparent from the proposal.
Could you speak in the mic, Chris?
It is apparent from the.
I don't think that's on.
It's apparent from the proposed statement of work from the outside consultants that they are limiting their involvement in these kinds of issues, as Mr. Keel noted, to non-legal matters, and they would be looking to advice from some outside counsel, and it's kind of unspecified as to who that might be in certain areas. So it will come up in that context.
Okay. Dr. Green?
First, let me compliment Daniel on the comprehensiveness of his report. As I read the report, the idea came to mind that if we had a lead counsel from among the current resources, we have a number of resources, but then we would have a lead counsel that would consult with the other counselors. Then we would have an individual, not on retainer, but an individual standing by that we could contact to address any grave issues that might come up that would be out of the purview of the lead counsel and the other resources. But I see the school district personnel working collaboratively with this group, and they would be at our disposal and would be somewhat obligated to us because we're a collaborative group.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Dr. Green, any other comments about what your thoughts are on this? Mr. McDonald?
Madam Chairman, two things I guess come to mind. One is, until the work of the Finance Committee is completed so that we know that we have some money to pay for an attorney, we might be premature in making any decision for outside counsel. And then secondly, if in fact there is money for that, I would suggest that the using counsel on an as-needed basis to be at least my preference, because I don't know what might present itself. I know I've worked with Ms. Raines on a number of different things and have observed the work of the other two attorneys on a number of occasions. And they're real quick to tell you if they think there's a conflict and that there should be somebody else. And obviously on those occasions, if all three of them were to opt out and say, not appropriate for me to speak on this, then we're going to have to go to somebody else. So now as to the model, as he pointed out, Mr. Keel pointed out in his presentation, there are any number of models we could go to, a retainer, and which generally would give you a lower per hour rate, or just wait and pay the higher hourly rate when and if that's needed. And again, I would ask the Finance Committee to give us some recommendation about that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Other comments? Mr. Hart?
Yes, I think I agree with Mayor McDonald on the as-need type, but have someone identified, because my fear would be is as we don't have an unlimited amount of time. This is new ground that's being plowed here in this state, really. And so when we get down to the last stages is when I believe we'll have more need for this. And at that point, having to rush and find somebody to school themselves. And what has transpired, to this point, the issues, I think we're opening ourselves up for expecting maybe too much at that point in time. And it's been my practical experience from the business world that when you ask that of someone from the legal profession, you stumble sometimes in the decisions you have to make. So I agree that I think I would prefer to have somebody that's on an on-call basis at least that has the background experience with us. Thank you.
All right. Other comments on this? Mayor?
Really just a clarification of something that Chris mentioned a moment ago. Chris, you said that the Boston group, that legal is not a part of their program. Is that by design on their part, or it's just not a part of their package? I guess where I'm leading with that is, is it possible through our consulting group to have someone on retainer through them if needed?
None of the RFPs from any of the consultants included legal services as a part of it, and generally speaking, lawyers would not be found in those kinds of organizations. Lawyers tend to aggregate together and separately.
Can they subcontract for an attorney?
Well,
to provide
conceivably, I
service?
think they could, but this does not seem to be something that's. They're very explicit in their statement of
Okay.
work that they plan to have it handled outside. And I would just echo the comments of my fellow commissioners. I think that this should be on an as-needed basis. We don't have a way to pay for it right now, is the reality of it. But it would be good if there could be a way to try to start identifying someone who might meet this need. Because when I look at this list of areas that we have already tentatively identified, this is a pretty comprehensive list, because you're talking about everything from bond funding to labor relations and employment matters, and based on my experience, it's hard to find somebody with that breadth of experience.
All right.
Chairman Prescott, this is Kenya Bradshaw. I just wanted to weigh in on this issue. I agree with what all of my fellow chairpersons have said. I just wanted to say there are national firms that have helped support districts who are consolidated or provide legal counsel to school districts that we may want to, again, to just think about as we're looking at firms and not just the local firms, to look for that breadth that Attorney Richardson talked about. And then one thing I wanted to say about, I would caution us against even trying to include this in a contract with a firm, because we want that neutrality, and that's why we're looking for something different from what Attorney Raines and her team have provided so excellently. We also we want neutrality from the firm that we're selecting also.
Thank you, Ms. Bradshaw. Daniel?
I would just echo that last point that Kenya made, and it's sort of in response to the consultant question. You know, one of the reasons that a firm might be resistant to that arrangement is because it then would again become unclear who their client was. Are they a client of the consultant firm, or are they a client of this entity, which we know may or may not exist legally without that 501c3 that we're talking about in another context.
Did Norris Tide have any idea what they were doing to us? They did. Martavis, Mr. Jones.
I know part of Judge Mays' ruling dealt with a special master. And so I don't know how many of these particular issues would be under the purview of a special master, but is that something that would...
We've been told that the special master, we don't have a special master, is this correct? And we could get to one via one of the other entities, but again, that seems to be rather circuitous. Let me kind of summarize what I'm hearing, and if there's something else, please tell me. First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Peel, for doing the work. And I think one of the more telling parts of this report is the list of possible areas in which we might need some legal assistance. I want to also at this time say that because I have worried her a lot just in this short time, that Ms. Rain has been extremely responsive when I have needed her, and we particularly had some needs as we were going through the process of selecting a consulting firm. But I do think that what I'm hearing is that we believe that there will likely indeed be times that we will need outside legal counsel, that it is not, that it would be much more useful to us if it were not one of the sources that is available to us tied to these other organizations that we need this on our own, that the most viable way or approach for that at this point would be to approach it on an as-needed basis for a number of reasons, one being that we don't know when we need it, and the other being that we don't have the funds at this particular time. And so it seems that the two things that we may need to do, first of all, is to begin to identify some, in terms of what Mr. Hart's comment, some possible individuals in some of these areas or firms, and we could, get together with the attorneys that we have and begin to look at that. Some of you who are attorneys, we could look at that. We may need outside firms, as Ms. Bradshaw mentioned, but we do not want to be caught looking at the time that we need it. So that's the first thing, that we need to begin to identify some possible legal talent that we could tap. And secondly, that we need to consider this as we are thinking about our fundraising, that it would be prudent to try to figure into the budget some amount that could be utilized. Now, whether that's possible, we don't know, because we're at the mercy of the generosity of our community, and we definitely will check into your suggestion, Mr. Jones. So those are, as I listen, kind of summarizing what I'm hearing. Is that what, have I gotten that? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, well then we'll, yes,
I just
Mr.
wanted
Kim.
to say I couldn't have put this together without Kelly and Dorsey and Valerie, and just want to acknowledge and thank them for their helping.
Yes, and I don't mean to leave out Dorsey and Valerie. We just haven't had an occasion yet to call upon them, but as we get into the work on the school-oriented, the committee work, I'm sure their expertise will be invaluable to us also. Mr. Hart.
Madam Chair, hearing all this discussion, would it perhaps be appropriate that the body appoint Daniel and Chris and yourself to bring a recommendation back to us at the next meeting?
Are you making that in the form of a motion?
I'm asking the chair if she would like a motion.
That would be good.
All right, I so move.
Second.
All right, that's been moved by Mr. Hart and seconded by Dr. Johnson, that Daniel Keel and Chris Richards and myself will get together and bring some more kind of clarified motion or recommendation to the committee. Do I hear any discussion on that?
Just for clarification, recommendation in terms of path or recommendation in terms of lawyer?
Yes.
That's correct.
And perhaps
that was intentional in the motion.
And perhaps that might be the plan for identifying specific lawyers too. All right. Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Pickler. What about putting Mr. Pickler on this too? He's another attorney that we have in this.
I do think we need to ensure that we move along this process, that we also, at the same time, are developing that budget, begin to identify the resources. Because, again, we don't need to be writing checks that we can't.
Exactly. And we spoke a little bit about budget before you walked in, but would you allow Mr. Hart for the chair and the committee to add a member to that group and ask Mr. Pickler to assist in that, since he is from the legal community?
I believe as the chair, you have the discretion.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Chris?
Would it be possible for us, when we're doing this, to also check on that $1 million
Yes.
notation, to have some formal process? I don't know who to move to ask to be put on that assignment, but if we could
Well-
find a way to get some more government money without having
Yeah.
to go to the community, for this, it would be helpful.
Mayor, do you have, yes, Mr. McDonald. I didn't mean that, Mayor, but I'm glad you raised your hand.
I texted Senator Norris
after he mentioned that and asked him if he knew if that was budgeted. He said he did not know, but he would double check.
Thank you very much, and then we'll know who to follow up with. Now, this mayor.
I was going to offer to get some
Thank you.
clarity on that issue.
Thank you.
And bring it back next week.
Thank you. And if
Not
we
next week.
we may can have that as we deliberate. Okay.
You all aren't meeting.
I like these folks that are texting
look at the
during the
turn.
meetings and getting the answers.
At
and
our
stuff.
next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, at our next meeting after Thanksgiving, we'll all give thanks that we don't have a meeting next week, too. Any other discussion on this motion by Mr. Hart? Hearing none. Okay, Daniel.
It's not on the motion. It's just to the extent that people in the room on the commission, know of lawyers that they think would be appropriate. I'd be happy. I was personally not necessarily a representative of the committee. Would be happy to take those suggestions.
Thank you. So we all have Mr. Kell's email address, and if you do and you look at that list and you see some of the areas that we may need, that would be helpful. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The motion carries. So we will get together and look at that and bring that back at the next meeting. And at the same time, we have Mayor Luttrell looking into the other issue, and Senator Norris looking at that too. So thank you very much. All right, now I'm going to ask a little leeway here. I had on the agenda, typically when we have had discussions, we've had a little bit of time to kind of debrief them the next day or the next meeting. We've had both superintendents speak to us, and we had a presentation of some data last week from Stanford Children. But and really our discussion went a little bit longer here than I anticipated. We also have 4 principals that are waiting to give us some good information on a panel that is kind of what I call down to the school level. We had the kind of high up level when we talked with the superintendents, and because it's 5:45 already, I'm wondering if we could move our kind of debriefing to the next meeting and go ahead and have the panel. Would that be acceptable? Okay, I would like for us to talk about all of the presentations, because we're not doing them just for fun. We're doing them to learn. But if we could do that, I just want to say that I kind of pulled something on the superintendents and asked at very short notice to pull together a panel, and this kind of really came from a comment that Ms. Richards made, that since we didn't have the presentation from Charlotte Mecklenburg, that we had a real good resource on our panel. And we do. Mr. Lewis Paget is on the ground every day running. Sometimes he has one white tennis shoe and one black tennis shoe, but today he dressed up for us a little bit, so he doesn't have that. But he's on the ground at the school level, really putting into action some of the things that the 2 superintendents spoke to us about. So at that suggestion, I thought, well, we'll call him. And then at another earlier meeting, Miss Avery, and I'm sorry that she's not here tonight, had mentioned visiting some schools, actually, and looking into some schools like White Station or Houston or one of the other schools in the county. So I thought that if we could get just 4 principals with similar demographics on both levels. So we have with us tonight 4 principals, and if I caused y'all any stress at all, I do apologize, because I don't like to do that. But your superintendent said there was no problem, and y'all could just do this immediately without any problem. So I'm going to ask the 4 principals to come up here, and why am I looking for it? Here it is. And if any of us need to take a quick break during that, we can. And if you all will come up and just get seated we'll get your mics, and then I'll kind of introduce it as we go along. All right, thank you, and let's take a quick break, but no more than 5 minutes.
No, I think what we're going to do.
Sounded like they were eating popcorn.
Yeah.
Having just a good old party.
I'm intrigued that Barbara thinks speaking to 21 of us is more stressful than dealing with 2,000 teenagers every day.
It's nice to have them off my
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And you,
from his report,
yeah, I mean, I'm going to move, so they need another mic up here.
I'd be so worried that somebody's going to slip through the cracks and then jump up and fight everybody.
Your turn, right? Kelly's done a great job, and we've been trying to wrestle with how to do this contract. We have a small problem.
I was in a meeting.
Oh, yeah, I know Glenn, yeah. He's a fine man. He's a good friend and a fine man. I'm fine. How are you? He's a keeper. He's a really good friend.
Isn't that neat? How did you get to work?
Little Bluetooth thing in there?
Hey, I go to the Apple store, and I've got a lot of somebody there.
Well, we'll see where this goes, but having sat through the Stale, I was on Staley's, I'm on the Finance Committee, and having started crawling through this, there's going to be some situations where I can easily see where
Lewis, make a
council
crowd now.
schools, the city schools,
Not putting
the
any
county
pressure on it.
schools are going to have well, and that's why while I'm willing to venture into storage, basis in place where this
Good point. She said, well,
if I thought that was going to be something.
legal challenges, guaranteeing wanting to do, so, we have to move forward with the assumption that it is all the children.
Absolutely.
Everything well? What has
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I she told me not to cry. Okay.
No, he can't see
Hey, Lou, this is Greg. Hey, quick break. I want to ask you, what does somebody need to do with me?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, before this starts?
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have to leave. I'm going to have to leave right around 6.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit late. So I'll make it.
You as well. Yeah, I'm great. I want to see at least a little bit. Hey, I'm going to have, I hope to have.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right, then. What are you going over to Ryan?
Wow. Down in the dirty. 369 if you don't count pre-K. You got pre-K in-house? 2 pre-K classes. 388 today. It goes up and down.
And it was
All right, if the members of the commission would please take their seats, because we've got these talented individuals up here ready to go.
I didn't take it.
Two items. One is that I'm hearing from our tech people that these mics are hot, so if you're whispering things to each other, it can be heard. We're trying to tape this, so we need to be careful. And also, even on the phone conferencees, we're getting a little feedback there, so you guys need to be aware of that, so, and do what you need to do with the mutes. All right, what I'm going to do is ask these four panel members to introduce themselves. And again, what this panel was designed to get two elementary. We talk so much about our districts being different, and they are. But this is designed to get two elementary schools that have similar demographics, and also two high schools that have similar demographics. I've asked them to tell us just a little bit about their school, what those demographics are, about their student achievement, and basically just what they do every day, the strategies they use to really address the needs of their students. So that's it. Please, let's give them a little hand, because they've done this on such short notice. They're going to speak, each of them, about 8 minutes, and then we'll be able to ask questions. Okay. Sorry, David.
Oh, I have to go first?
Ladies first.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. Good evening. And first of all, I want to thank the Commission for allowing me the opportunity just to share a little bit about Valentine Elementary and about our scholars and what we go through every day. So Valentine is a school that was built in 1930, and you can find us located at 1682 Valentine. We are in the historical district of North Evergreen and Valentine, and we serve the children of North Memphis. Currently, this year, I have about 320 students that are enrolled. That changes from day to day, but pretty much stays true to itself. We have pre-K through 5. We also have 2 self-contained classrooms for special ed that are autistic nonverbal students, and we're very excited about them because they add a lot of personality to our schools, and our children really embrace that. I have about 28 certified teachers on our faculty. We also have staff members with secretaries. I have a full-time counselor, librarian. We have a school nurse that comes in a few days a week, and a few other professionals that come and help us serve our children. As far as me, and I left myself off for last because this is really about the students, but I have been with Memphis City Schools for 10 years. This is my 3rd year at Valentine, 2.5 years that I've completed, and I plan to complete this year as long as no one else says different. Prior to coming to Memphis, I was living in Kansas City, and I served as a counselor for 2 years in Kansas City, Missouri, and I was a teacher in Kansas City, Kansas for 5 years. So I have been doing this for almost 2 decades now, and so we're still excited about the work that we do with children. Coming to Valentine, there were several things that we had to put in place in order to make sure that the boys and girls received everything that they need. And we start with looking at our beliefs and what we believe about children. So one thing we want you to know that Valentine is it's a very family-oriented school. The families have been in the school for a number of years, generations of families. We teach now the grandchildren. My secretary has been there for 40 years, and everyone that comes in the building, they'll say, "You were the secretary when I went to elementary school here," or "My grandchildren go here now." And I can remember, and sometimes when they say grandchildren, and I'm thinking, "You're still here," and she loves every minute of it. So it really is a family feel at Valentine. We use all of our teachers and our support personnel to educate our children. Everybody, there's nothing that no one will say that they will do to make sure that our children learn. It is a do whatever it takes feel at Valentine. Primarily, for instance, myself, I teach classes. If I have to teach classes, if I have to be the custodian, I will do that. The children's, I think, most favorite job that they see me do is serving in the cafeteria. They seem to think that that is the best thing, to see me serving food in the cafeteria. But if that's what it takes to make Valentine run, that's what we will do. So we model that for our students, and we want them to know that it's about them. So we want them to have an excellent day as they come. Our motto at Valentine is receiving students, releasing scholars. We say that every morning. We have a pledge that we say to them, and they say it back to us because we speak into them that they come to us as students, but when they leave us, we expect them to be scholars so that they can take whatever they've learned anywhere they want to go. So some of the things that we do at Valentine to get there, we have some academic approaches that we use, and we have a collaborative approach that is not just from me. I may be there and I may be the person that has to make the final decisions, but it truly is a collaborative experience. Our teachers come to the table and they use data to really drive their instruction. And I do allow them the autonomy to make the instructional decisions because I know the boys and girls, but they know them even better. They're with them every single day. And so as long as they can come and they can show the data and show why they're doing what they do, we allow that. And I allow them to be the leaders in that classroom to really take those boys and girls to the next level. Some of the things that we have in place that we're really proud of right now is we're a very technology-rich school. Technology is absolutely everywhere in our building. Every classroom has a smart board, and when I say every classroom, I mean even support teachers. My art teacher has a smart board. There's one in the PE room. Everyone that can utilize a smart board has one. We use document readers to share with our boys and girls. We use CPS units so that they can assess themselves. Anything that you can think of technology, one thing that we are struggling with is that there are sometimes that because all of these technology equipment pieces are new, we're not always the ones that are the experts. So now what we found is our boys and girls are the experts in the classroom, so they tend to teach us. When something goes wrong, they're very quick to tell you how to operate something, and it makes them feel good to show themselves as leaders. But we are very excited to be able to take them into the 21st century so that they can have an experience like none other that they may not necessarily have in their home. We also use intervention pieces, and the way that we design those interventions, we have ed plans that we look at and we decide what types of interventions and even enrichment do we have to have for our boys and girls. One thing that we saw, we were really trying to meet the needs of students that were not really scoring proficient, but we knew that we had to take a look at all of our students. So there are some students that excel academically, so we put things in place and we document that through ed plans and through behavior plans so that we can make sure that we are looking at the whole child and we're meeting all of their needs. We use several computer-based programs with our boys and girls because they absolutely love the computer. We use Stanford Math. We use Reading Plus, which is something that if you've never experienced Reading Plus, I suggest that you Google it, read all about it. Our boys and girls are absolutely excited. It tests them on all the NAEP standards, and it takes them where they are and it moves them forward. They can go as far as the 12th grade level in reading if they stay focused on that program. And so far we have 7 children that have started in September, and they have now met their grade level and they're moving forward, and so we will continue to do that with them. We also have programs such as Language X, and they're just intervention programs to help our boys and girls reach the reading goals that we need for them to do. We have several extracurricular programs, and we also celebrate our students. I'm not going to go through all of those that are on the page. I will tell you about one in particular. We did have an issue with making sure that our attendance stayed where we needed it to stay. So on this year, we decided that what we would do is we would give away bicycles. And we went on the prowl for donors that would give us bicycles. We give away 2 bicycles every 20 days. You have to come to school, you have to be there every day, you have to be on time, and you cannot leave early. And so when you do that, you go on a drawing, and we give away bicycles just like on The Price is Right. So they come to school every day now. But I do want to get into the major focus, which is our growth that we have seen in Valentine. And if you look, you will see some of the scores that we have listed for you now. I came on board at the 2009-2010 school year, and at the end of that school year, In reading and language arts, we scored 23%, and in math, we were at 28%. And in this last school year, in math, we were at 43%, so we had a 15-point gain from last year to this year. And in reading, we were at 32%, and we had a 9-point gain. Now, I apologize that it's in red, because usually red means something bad, but we put it in red so that it would draw attention to it. So that is actually something good, because there has been seen a tremendous amount of growth in our students. So we are really putting our focus on academics. On the first 2 years that I was there, the focus was really on the culture and really developing those students so that we're able to teach them and they're able to see themselves as the scholars that we want them to be. In doing that, now moving forward, our shift has now become more a focus on our academics. So as our student achievement is going to rise, we want to make sure that our boys and girls know there is a focus. We have experts in the building. We want our teachers to know that they're experts. We don't have to always go on the outside to find people that can teach us and that can provide professional development. So what we're doing now is encourage our teachers to step up and be the leaders that they are so that they can train each other, and then they can go out into the community and train their other colleagues. And we're also preparing our students. We want them to exhibit academic confidence, because as they leave us, we want them to know, again, that they can be anything, anybody, and go anywhere they want to go. So I just hope if you ever have time, just come by and stop and see us and take a look at our little school at 1682 Valentine, where we receive students and we release scholars. Thank you.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get if you don't mind, I want to be sure everybody gets spoken, if that's all right, and then we'll come back.
Madam Chairman, can I just ask one real quick question? Because I don't it was just about this chart, because you were explaining how this is good, and I obviously don't understand it, which isn't a big surprise. On the far column, the numbers are generally higher than the column to the right.
Right.
What does this represent?
Okay, so on the far column where you see the 2008-2009 school year, those numbers represent when we were under the old standards, and that was before we actually changed standards and we had a different AMO that we had to be tested under. So we raised the standards in Tennessee, and then we had a different bar that was set. So in the 2009-2010 school year, for schools that were in our elementary schools, and I believe K through 8, the AMO for math was 20%. Schools had to hit 20% to show that they had achieved that goal. And in reading, it was 32%. And then for this past school year in math, the goal was 40% in math, and it's 49% in reading. And every year, it goes up almost about 20 points each year until we are supposed to meet the goal of 100% proficiency for all of our students.
All right. Is this like 20%? Does that mean that 20% of your students are? I don't know what an AMO is. So does that mean they're at grade level in math?
Tell me where you see 20%.
20%, right under 2009, 2010 for math. 28%.
Oh, 20. Okay. 28% of our students were proficient or advanced in mathematics for the 2009-2010 school year. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to pass something, ma'am. Would you take that and just look at it and pass it? My name is Louis Padgett. I'm principal in North Haven. Just a piece of paper. Just pass it around. Everyone needs to touch North Haven. You really can't. I don't have any paper for you. I don't like to kill trees. I'm a farmer. I'm also a soldier. I love my country, first of all. And Dewey said schools exist to promote the ideals of a democracy, so don't ever get it confused. Without an educated democracy, we're doomed as a nation. So the work we do with my colleagues here, it's imperative to prevent the collapse of our democracy. Now, I sit before you this afternoon as principal at North Haven Elementary School, but I'll ask my bosses in the back, all of them, raise your hand, because I couldn't sit without my bosses, all of them. Mr. Simpson, my evaluator, Ms. Spiegman, those are my bosses. I run a school that's 99% poverty, and I'm going to pick up on our AMO. Right now in the state of Tennessee, I'm sorry, ma'am, but right now in the state of Tennessee, we do something called the NAEP standards. This is our kids are normed against kids across the nation. That AMO is your annual measurable objective, okay? Now, the reading scores in 4th grade are at, and I sort of can guess because, in the Army, you're always trying to remember something. So I'll say we're at 236 in reading, which means our scores stayed the same as a state as compared to other 4th graders across the United States. See, before we had our own tests and our own way of rating it, and according to the nation, it meant absolutely nothing. We were measuring something, but no one knew. Now we're comparing kids at North Haven that are 99% poverty to the rest of the world. And I pointed out that gentleman back there with that pink necktie because he allows me to be principal at North Haven that is 99% poverty that enrolled this week, today is Thursday, 7 homeless kids. A 12-year-old is floating around out there that's never been to school in his life. So I'm wondering, he's not coming to my school. I don't know where he's going because he's too old for mine. But I've got the 3 others from that group. And somebody's going to tell me next year that I'm a bad principal because these kids don't know how to read. Nobody's going to care that this girl is 8 years old. And I pass you a piece of paper, that little piece of paper that's moving down there, it should be moving. That's from a little child that has 4 brothers in the mayor's, in the sheriff's jail. We teach self-correcting at North Haven. I can teach a whole lot of things, but my biggest thing is on the night that you make the biggest decision of your life. I feel like I want to have taught you well enough so that you might choose, don't get it confused, you might choose the path that leads to good citizenship. That little girl gave me that paper going out the door this evening. She said, Miss Pat, you got to read this. I've been chasing them down about reading because just today, and I have to cheer, we bought $2,000 worth of the most current books that Barnes & Noble has, and my babies are reading Rick Riordan, Percy Jackson. You guys, they love those little Captain Underpants and all of those, but to read Rick Riordan and Percy Jackson, those are 590-page books. They're reading currently in the mainstream. I love a computer, but there's no evidence a computer taught anybody how to do anything. It's not fluid intelligence. It's manual. So we are preparing children to participate in a democracy that does not vote. Look at the percentages. That does not participate in the way that our fathers did. Therefore, I sit before you as principal at North Haven Elementary School to tell you I run a school home. I got to answer that little girl's question tomorrow or talk to her about the book. She didn't put the title. I don't know what she's reading. But she's going to want to tell me all about it, to run up to me this evening, and she's in my 5th grade. And I know 3 of her brothers are arrested for burglary. And she's going to want an accounting from me tomorrow. I'll get my evaluation tomorrow morning. She's, Miss Pat, you read it? And I'm going to say, girl, what was it about? And we're going to have a discussion as she gets her breakfast in the morning at North Haven Elementary School, a school where there are no grades together. Everything is mixed up. There's either 366 kids today or 382. But what's apparent, and I can measure it, is that 80% of my parents that are under the age of 30 do not have a high school diploma. That speaks volumes for what I'm doing out there. And I couldn't do it without that gentleman telling me, Sweet Lou, do what you have to do. That's what he calls me. I don't know why he calls me that, but he has always called me that. Because one time, years ago at Houston High School, we were in a conference. He was in his office, and I stopped by. And I said, you probably don't remember. I said, Chief, I'm still trying to be principal. He was a principal. And I could win an interview pool. I'm good with interviewing. I can get to the finals. But, somebody's got to lose in the finals. You lose in the finals 5 years, people say you ought to quit. But, my grandmama went to school with George Washington Carver. She don't know what quit means. So, people say, I wouldn't go back down there and let them judge me again. Well, those kids in North Haven needed me. And I'm not perfect. The most low-down person on the panel, you're talking to him. But I'm going to try to build good citizens because sometimes you pick unlikely people to lead, and we lead a wonderful school. I don't give the papers. You can Google us. But it's a school home. It scared me today. I came out in the halls because it was so quiet. 5 years ago, it was a combat zone. Only thing we fight now is fires because tonight it's going to be close to freezing. There might be 3 house fires because the houses are wired with aluminum wiring. It's critical. Your children, if you have them, would not survive an hour where my babies come from. The reality is I send a 5-year-old 1.5 miles walking through God knows what. Now that gentleman way back there in that blue, raise your hand, way back there in that blue shirt. Now the mayor's gone. Those gentlemen I work with, because that superintendent allows me to do wonderful things at North Haven. And what I do, I have a USDA food grant that gives the kids a fresh fruit snack 3 days a week. We feed something called, we were the first in Shelby County, but I don't brag because that's not what you do in the Army. In the Army, you never volunteer, you always disappear. You learn that the first 3 weeks. But we do something called grab and go breakfast. Walmart has taken it nationally. When I came there, a 5th grader told me, he said, hey, we sit down and eat. I said, son, I stop and get my breakfast in this truck. So you're going to stop in that lunchroom and get your breakfast and get in that room, and you might learn something by osmosis. He looked at me, what is that? I said, go find out. We teach work, because if a man doesn't work, he don't eat. You've got to work. We can't keep a hand out at North Haven. We try to give each other a hand, but we try to grow. We're growing citizens. We're teaching reading, and about what you said on that chart, it's tough to teach a kid. 70% of my kids do not read at grade level. They can grow, but they don't read at grade level because the law says for 90 minutes I got to teach them reading, an hour I got to teach them math, and then I got to measure them on that computer, and then I got to apply some type of an intervention. Kids that don't read well really need to read. It's no big secret. They need to read out loud over and over. For you grandparents that have a book called the foot book. Left foot, left foot, left foot, right. Feet in the morning, feet at night. The kid doesn't even know the words, but they remember the story. Poor kids have to read. And they're arrogant. They don't know how much they don't know. But they don't have any fear at North Haven. But what you'll find there is a warm, loving faculty. You'll find a place where Shelby County Schools has allowed a school to grow. Somebody told me the other day we were in a documentary. I hadn't seen the documentary, but I'm going to look at it because what we're doing there is we're saving the community. We couldn't fix what was broken at North Haven without fixing the community. And I feel like the mayor's office in partnership has given me the strength to fix a community. The parents love it. I can measure my report card by the fact that the North Haven Community Association bought a sign last week, $600, and nobody gave them the money. They had a yard sale. They're getting ready to have a yard of the month, and I'm sitting out there wondering, okay, who's going to shoot a hole in that sign when they put it up? I mean, the reality is my boys know bullets. They know video games. But tomorrow morning, a kid's going to walk up to me and say, Mr. Padgett, we got put out last night. I'm going to say, for real? And she's going to say yes, or he. And they're going to tell me that story. And I have an intervention coordinator because the superintendent has allowed us to have a structure that is replicable. The structure I have at North Haven is cost effective first. It's efficient second. When I came there, it was a middle passage. You do 3 years and leave. Every single teacher, every 3 years, moved on to those nice places out there where he is. Kylie, beautiful. But here's the problem. My kids in Germantown think this. My kids think, the kids that come to me from Fraser think North Haven is Germantown. They think, my parents think that. Because they say, we talking to you and you meeting us at the door. Yeah, I want to see you. Like a lady told me yesterday. I clicked on the last principle. So I'm going, look, lady, we're not going to shoot anybody in here. And she was serious, you guys. She was serious, had a restraining order from that school, my sister's district school. And I said, lady, you really acted that bad of a fool? They didn't treat my baby right. I said, maybe you weren't right. But you have to tiptoe around them and provide an education. And what we're doing in North Haven is tiptoeing around my babies to provide an education. We're not perfect. They all can't read, Chris. They can't read. But they're learning to read. I have 37 kids in the governor's lottery pre-K. I have an intervention counselor, and y'all keep that in mind if you have a poor school, you need one. She coordinates between 2 social workers, 1 homeschool liaison, every food pantry, every grocery store. Anything you need, you can get there. And parents don't like asking a principal for that. They like the relationship they have with her. How you doing, Miss Smith? I'm here to see Miss Glover. Hold